Welcome to today's Religion Media Centre's briefing, which is on the historic news announced this morning that religious education is to be included in the national curriculum. And we're joined by many people involved in this story, including some who've been campaigning for this moment for many years. So we're going to start by introducing Dr. Vanessa Ogden, who is a member of the panel of the Curriculum and Assessment Review, which announced the decision today, and also Chief Executive of the Mulberry Schools Trust. And then Dr. Richard Kueh, former inspector and subject lead for religious education, and now a leader with the Academy Trust and member of the RE Council. And Deborah Weston from the RE Policy Unit. Dr. Catherine Wright, CEO of Callum St Gabriel's Trust. Sarah Lane Court, Chair of the RE Council, and Ed Paulson, former Deputy Chair of the RE Council. Professor Susanna Cornwall from Exeter University, the Professor of Constructive Theologies, and Paul Smalley, Chair of the National Association of Standing Advisory Councils for Religious Education. So thank you all very much indeed for joining us at such short notice. And I'm going to start, if I may, with you, Dr. Ogden. You were on the panel of the Curriculum and Assessment Review, which was chaired by Professor Becky Francis. In general terms, I just wonder if you sketch in the background for us, what are the key changes that the report recommends, the changes to the curriculum that it is seeking to bring in?
Thank you for having me here today, for inviting me to the meeting. And just to say, I think Professor Becky Francis is really clear that the report, any report that we would make and recommendations would be evolution and not revolution. I think that's a very important starting point because, one could really reform a curriculum in a way that makes it very different from what we've had previously. But I think for the profession, it was really important to have improvement rather than really radical changes. I mean, that said, the recommendations around RE are quite groundbreaking and important. As you say, I have said previously in these podcasts and broadcasts, is that the situation for RE has been challenging for many years, and I spent 32 years in the profession working very hard to ensure that its importance is protected. And so to have that importance recognised now in the recommendations of the review panel is a significant step forward.
Just to jump in there, can you clarify a couple of points for us? This review that's been done, does it apply to schools only in England, or is it England and Wales?
It's England. The Welsh curriculum has seen a similar reform recently.
And the review, the curriculum review, is this the curriculum for all ages from 5 to 18?
Yes, so not early years, but 5, yes, right through to post-16.
When you talk about in general terms, what the report was aiming to achieve, can you explain to us why the government decided to create the report, to review the curriculum? What was the thinking behind it?
When you read the report, it's stated very clearly that it's been some time since more than 10 years since we've had a full review of the national curriculum. And it is recommended that, and the panel recommends in the report, that there should be similar reviews about every 10 years. And that's so that the curriculum remains up to date and relevant, especially in times where technology makes life very fast moving. This report also recommends that periodically, in between big reviews every decade, that the DFE looks at the situation of the curriculum in the current context and makes some light touch changes where necessary. So, for example, AI will increasingly speed up developments in those areas. So that will require some agile review more often than 10 years, for example. So similar situations for different subjects or different parts of the curriculum.
To clarify your role on the review panel, were you the only member of the panel that was looking at religious education, or was that a shared responsibility?
Well, it's all a shared responsibility. So every single recommendation and every single part of the report has been reviewed and contributed to by the panel. My expertise on the panel was not because of RE. Actually, it was because of my wider educational experience. However, because I have RE specialism in my background to such a degree, it made sense for the panel to ask me to do deeper investigation into that subject, simply because actually it's quite technical. And, you have to know and have some lived experience, I think, of the subject to be able to really understand the complexity.
So when you turned your attention to religious education as a subject, what were the concerns that you as a panel expressed to each other about the changes that you thought were necessary?
Well, I mean, actually, the things that were expressed initially were about the picture, as I said, the sort of the picture of the subject and its health outside of the national curriculum. So obviously, we all know that RE is part of the basic curriculum, and because of these other things like academy freedoms and so on, which had contributed to the diminishment of the subject, it became very clearly stark that the RE was in quite a difficult position, and in a lot of cases not taught very well, and in some cases not taught at all. So, so I think it was a case of being met with that picture, and even I was quite shocked actually about the relative health of the subject, even though I am a specialist, and it was very stark. So important, therefore, for the panel then to engage with that and to commission further deep dive work, which is what I did.
We've reported on various campaigns going back over many years to improve religious education. And it seems as though, now I'm an outsider, I'm not within the education establishment. It seemed to me that no message was getting through. And I'm wondering if you could explain whether there was a kind of moment of change within the group when there became a consensus that something had to be done.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the work of a panel that lasts sort of just over a year, so July last year to September now, there are going to be moments where you revisit things in the light of new information. So the deep dive information was new information to the panel. And so I think it was at that point, having looked at the arguments about why the subject needed attention and looking at the data, and then a further deep dive study that lasted about 5 weeks, that really went into conversation within the sector about what we had been seeing and what might be possible. Was then I wrote a report on that, on all of that information, and it was at that point that the panel made this decision to recommend that RE would be best served in the national curriculum, that it would give all students high quality RE provision in a way that was no longer happening, albeit that SACREs are incredibly important. But if they're not resourced properly and they're allowed to, whether deliberately or not, they're allowed to diminish, it can't help.
Was it simply a matter of kind of professional pride in teaching well, or was there a discussion around its importance for social cohesion, community building, religious literacy?
Yes, absolutely. It was the latter. So, obviously, it's really important to have high quality teaching of any subject that you put it into the curriculum, whether that's the basic curriculum or the national curriculum. But there was a recognition that the subject is absolutely critical in a modern society now, with the global nature of that world, of that society that we live in, with the interconnections permitted by technology, which we didn't have for many years previously in these debates. Being able to see into the world of geopolitical events as they're happening from other parts of the world is possible now in the way that it wasn't even a few years ago, really. And so people are much more aware of different societies and their makeup, as much as they are also aware of the developing plural nature of Britain, given its history and everything that we know about it from the Swan Report and previous,
Thank you.
influxes of
Thank
people.
you for answering all those questions. I'd like to move to Dr. Richard Kueh, former inspector, and you did your own report when you were working within Offstead. I believe that's right. You did a report in 2021, and you identified shortfalls in the way that religious education was being offered in schools. The same kind of question to you, really. At that time, did you detect a willingness within the education establishment to change things so that now you're shocked that today's decision is to improve? Or did you see that this change was happening in 2021?
Ruth, thanks very much indeed. A little bit of clarificatory context. Yes, as you rightly said, I was the former HMI national lead for RE at Offstead. I left that role in last summer, and I now work as Chief Education Officer at Cam Academy Trust, a family of schools just outside Cambridge. You also mentioned that the 2021 report. There were in fact two significant reports that came out from Offstead during my time. The first one was a research review in 2021, which looked at the factors that affected high quality RE, and then on the basis of school visits and inspection, a 2024 report called Deep and Meaningful, which explored what actually the quality of RE in England's schools looked like. And certainly that 2024 report identified the fact that there were clearly pockets of strength within the sector, within schools, and there was some really high quality expert RE going on. But although Vanessa alluded to the very sort of complex landscape in which schools find themselves having to understand the requirements that about RE that they are required to follow. Many schools just did not steer through those challenging waters particularly well. We saw evidence of poor subject and pedagogical knowledge, scant training, a real lack of clarity around the content of what RE was, content to be taught in RE, poorly constructed curricula, and the impact on pupils was really noticeable. Misconceptions abounded, and pupils ended up possessing superficial and limited caricatures about the religious traditions and non-religious traditions they learned.
Did you have any expectation that this decision was coming today?
So linked to that, the report recommended that the government urgently address that lack of clarity, and in a number of ways that it would deal with it. That it would deal with the rather complex set of statutory expectations and non-statutory guidance that there were. That schools would appeal to, that needed to be updated. Some of that was radically out of date. I think some bearing a set of bearing relationships to an education landscape that was there in 2010. I think was some of the oldest non-statutory guidance that was out there, and so I'm particularly heartened that the Curriculum Assessment Review has considered the Offstead report as part of its evidence base. I think it's got a number of references within that final report showing that actually that there is a lack of parity across the sector for the kind of quality of RE that pupils get.
Thank you. I know we've got lots of teachers on the call, so I know there'll be questions probably coming to you and Dr. Ogden a bit later, but I'm going to plough on to some of the campaigners who've been campaigning for this for many years. And I'd like to go to Deborah Weston. And Deborah, you have so many titles to your name, but the one I picked out for you at the top, I don't know if this is the correct one from the RE policy unit, but we will say for people outside the kind of magic circle, there's NATRE, the National Association for Teachers of RE, there's the RE Council, Religious Education Council, there's this now the RE policy unit, and probably there are many other groups. And many of you on the call have at various points been members of all of these different groups as well. So with your experience, Deborah, I'd like to ask you, how did you respond when you saw the report come out and it said that religious education should be part of the national curriculum?
I was absolutely delighted, Ruth. As you say, it's been something that has been in our sights for a number of years. I don't think I dared dream that it would come through. And I want to give a big tribute to Vanessa Ogden, to Dr. Ogden on this, because I know she has held the faith in this subject for many, many years and really helped us get across the line. And I suppose the other issue as well is that anybody who works in civil service will tell you that they're always told religious education is a very risky thing to get involved with in your political career. And so I think that's another reason why, we had to hold our breath.
When you came to the review today, I don't know if you submitted anything that was part of the report, but NATRE has produced lots of statistics. It does statistics every year. The numbers of students taking GCSE, the number taking A-level. But you did do a set of statistics recently, which was quite stark, about the number of schools that were breaking the law, because religious education, you have to do it. You have to teach it by law. And you found, was this right? 44% of academies broke the law and didn't offer religious education. Just talk us through that.
So not quite. So NATRE does a survey for secondary every 2 years and primary every 2 years as well, but alternate years. And so we've been monitoring the data. I mean, the 44%, actually nearly 45%, was one that Vanessa referred to, which I think caused quite a lot of shock, which is the decline in the number of students leaving school with a GCSE, either a short course or a full course. And that means that those children that leave school going out into society, that's 44% fewer are having that kind of experience in an in-depth study of RE. And I suppose that comes around to another point I know we've been talking about, which is, how did we get here? How did we get to the situation where RE was in such trouble? And that comes out in the interim report that was recognised. And so several people have mentioned this. Over the last 14 years, we had almost a perfect storm of probably unintended consequences of government policy. So academies obviously not being required to follow their agreed syllabus, not being required actually to follow the national curriculum either. And that meant that there was no benchmark for them to aspire to in high quality RE. And what we saw over the years was the academies particularly falling foul of the law in not delivering even a significant amount of religious education. So that piece of legislation caused that change caused a lot of problems. The loss of capacity of local authorities. So the academy system came in, the local authority funding declined, and therefore the capacities of local authorities to support the SACREs. And SACREs, of course, likely agreed syllabuses, monitor provision, and so on. So local authorities, loss of capacity is a big issue. Being excluded from the English Baccalaureate in the humanities box, that caused decline as well, because it meant fewer children were able to study religious education at Key Stage 4 and had to choose it in a very crowded open bucket. So that was another problem. Then the loss of specialist teachers. So we've missed our recruitment target for 13 of the last 14 years and missed that target spectacularly, which incidentally makes, it's another matter to hand, and that is that we've lost the bursary to train teachers this year, which is devastating.
With the changes coming in and the review, the report coming out this morning, will all these things magically change?
Certainly not. And I think that's something that as we go forward, we've got to be thinking about. So I was very heartened to hear that the Secretary of State today had talked about the need for more specialist teachers. So that's crucial. Primary teachers, they get between 0 and 3 hours of training on RE. Some get no training whatsoever. So we've got to train up the workforce. We've got to make people more confident. 51% of the people who teach RE in our classrooms mainly teach something else. 51% that are teaching RE to the children of people that are listening to this call. don't have a specialist in front of them. So that's another big thing that needs to be dealt with.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Dr. Catherine Wright now. Catherine, you're the CEO of Culham St Gabriel's Trust. Again, someone who, your organisation anyway, has mounted various reviews, your own reports, campaigns over the past few years. How did you respond when you saw that RE would become a subject on the national curriculum?
I think I literally shouted hooray, Ruth, to be honest. I was absolutely delighted. And the reason I was delighted is not just for us, for having campaigned with many others, or even for the religion and world views community, but actually for children. And I think that's what really struck me about the report in a overarching sense, is what is right for young people. And coming into a world which is increasingly complex to navigate. And that's what really struck me. That's why I was particularly delighted.
This will have a major repercussion, won't it, for the teaching of teachers in how to teach RE? I mean, Deborah was just talking about that earlier. You're going to need more specialist teachers for a start. But, and I know it's going to be evolution, not revolution. You were talking about that earlier, Dr. Ogden. But what kind of time frame will your organisation have to be looking at to roll out more courses, to campaign for more teachers, to get further education and teacher training colleges and universities engage in all of this? How long will all this take?
The answer, Ruth, probably is I don't actually know the answer to that question. It depends how the next two, this staged process that's talked about in the review, how that goes going forward. But there are some things I think that teachers can do now, and that we are providing through Culham St Gabriel's and other organisations as well, like NATRE and the RE Council, for example. There are many different aspects of support, and one of them I'd particularly like to highlight is around the National Content Standard. The National Content Standard is mentioned in the review, and I will quote, as a catalyst for more substantial reform. That National Content Standard sets out an exemplar for content going forward, which I think is really helpful. Culham St Gabriel's has an e-learning course that we provide for people to engage with, to learn more about what the National Content Standard is. So because this seems to be an important part of what's being stated in the recommendations to build on this National Content Standard, one thing I would really encourage teachers to do right now in terms of professional development is to make sure that they've really understand what that is about and engage with that. In terms of timelines, I think it's really difficult to say, but I think going forward, one of the key things that all of us can do, whichever organisation with, is to really engage with this process that is talked about, to be willing to listen, to be humble, to learn from one another. I think those are the key things that everybody, whether they're a teacher, an advisor, SACRE member, whoever they are, I think those are the key things to do right now.
This is a good point to come back to you, Dr. Ogden. There was mention made of a small group that would be set up to see all this change through. Can you tell us how that would work?
Well, it's very early days at the moment, as the report's just been published this morning. But of course, I've been giving some thought to this and drafting a set of terms of reference. I mean, essentially, it is up to me to determine who should be part of that group. We would obviously need people who have professional expertise in a front-facing way within education in all sorts of different parts of the RE sector. And it will be really important to hear the voices of our religious and communities of other belief systems as well that are not normally labelled as religious. So it'd be really important to hear those voices as well as sector voices. There are many things that are important in this. I mean, the role of SACREs, for example, is incredibly important. There are huge sensitivities around sort of the dual system and the need to ensure that schools of religious character are supported and that there's no sense in which their position is undermined by what we do. And there shouldn't be any need for that to happen. What we're doing is looking at how we present a set of programmes of study for the Secretary of State for Education to consider.
Right.
But there's a lot of other thinking about some of the things that you've said about how we can, around this work, build a reinvigoration of the importance of the subject area, a celebration of its importance for community cohesion, as we spoke about right at the beginning, and to reinforce how important these resources are. And I think particularly SACREs around community cohesion. I benefited enormously as a leader of RE from the work of SACREs. So whilst there is diminishment in resourcing of those expert bodies, it's important that we argue for their attention and support and improvement.
Right. It's a good moment to turn to Paul Smalley, who's the Executive Officer of the National Association of Standing Advisory Councils for Religious Education. So, Paul, can you tell us what the implications are for SACREs? Does it mean that they will disappear or that they will change radically in their nature?
Well, the SACREs is pleased to welcome the report, and I'm particularly delighted to hear Vanessa just say how important and influential SACREs are as expert groups in the locality. One thing that I've been trying to stress for a couple of years at least is that the SACRE does not write the curriculum. They do not write the syllabus. That's a separate body. The report notes that, an agreed syllabus conference. The role of the SACRE is to inform, to advise, to support, to resource the efficient delivery of that curriculum in a locality. So really there is no necessity for SACRE's role to change. They still will be advising schools, advising authorities in the locality, supporting that work, providing expertise and support for teachers to be able to deliver the highest quality RE being possible.
You are quite certain that there will continue to be regional variations, despite the fact there's a national curriculum. For example, in an area that may have more Sikhs than any other faith, that's the Sikhi tradition would be the largest tradition to be studied. That kind of thing would still go on, you think?
Well, I think we need to see what this is going to be a very long process. We're talking a two-stage process that to put together a statement. The national content standard is a good starting point for that, but it makes sense for one of the what broader principles of the curriculum and assessment review is to make sure that pupils feel included in their curriculum, and that's not just an RE focus. That's a whole curriculum focus, and I'm sure that whether the variation is at the level of the school or the locality or the region, one of the things that I would really hope is maintained is that local connection to the real living experience of people with religious belief and with non-religious belief.
Thank you. So I'll go to Ed Paulson, who's the former Deputy Chair of the RE Council. So Ed, what advice would you give to RE teachers, there are many on this call, about the prospect of change and how an RE teacher is meant to face that? New learning, new syllabuses, new role within the school community where they happen to be serving. What are the challenges that lie ahead for RE teachers?
Well, thank you, Ruth, for inviting me, and it's a thrilling day. It really is, and that's teachers who think that. I've been with teachers today at the launch of an agreed syllabus in Somerset, and the response was overwhelmingly positive amongst that group of teachers who'd come to find out about a new syllabus launch for their schools. I think there are some people who are saying, well, why have we put all this trouble into? I've seen this, some comments on social media about this today. We've just rewritten all of our schemes of work and now we're going to be asked to change. Well, I don't think that's the case, to be honest. I've been looking at the history national curriculum recently. It's not overly prescriptive. The Key Stage 1 and 2 documents are just over 4 pages long. There's a lot of optionality. I think that so just to conclude in that sense, teachers feel really positive about it, is they want clarity. They want to know what they should be teaching. There's a bit of a wild west out there of good syllabuses, poor syllabuses, good resources, poor resources, and not really knowing. And then school leaders looking at the subjects and saying, well, we don't know how to judge because we don't know what the standards are. And Offstead comes in and they don't know what standards to use either. So I'm hoping that we see some real clarity here so that teachers are able to plan more and also to understand the prior learning of their pupils more, to know what concepts and what processes and what skills and have been learned before, to have much more clarity on that. So, for instance, between year 6 and year 7, as a former secondary teacher, how do I know what my pupils have studied in the 6 years of schooling up until then in their RE? I'm almost blind. Now, this will really help, and I think those are things that teachers will find really significantly different.
So I have a question for Dr. Catherine Wright, which is about the content of the curriculum. Are you imagining, or do you have any certainty that the central spine of the curriculum will be religion and worldviews? Because you've been campaigning for that, and I wonder whether the introduction of RE on the national curriculum will herald religion and worldviews.
The answer is a bit like before. I'm going to sound like a crack record. Well, we don't know. However, what I would say is that the conceptual paper that was released with the interim report set out quite clearly a sort of a way of thinking about the curriculum that is very similar to that which is in the National Content Standard, which is around substantive knowledge, disciplinary knowledge and personal knowledge. And in the National Content Standard, there is an exemplar way of looking and exploring that as well, which does take a religion and worldviews approach. So one might hope that those things are at least considered going forward, but it is not, it's certainly not my place to say what the content's going to be at this point. We can't say. But I should add as well that as just talked about launch of agreed syllabuses and so on, there are a number of agreed syllabuses now already that are using a religion and worldviews approach. So this will not necessarily be new to lots of teachers. Many are taking that on board already and I think would welcome that move going forward.
So I've got another question for you, which is religious education will remain a legal responsibility, will it, in the school curriculum to offer children? And if it is a legal responsibility and it's on the national curriculum, will it end what we've been seeing that some of Deborah's surveys have thrown up, that in for example, the years leading up to GCSE, a school can provide one lesson a term and that ticks the box. Will it end those practices, do you think?
There's always been a statutory requirement to teach religious education. I think this is about equity for all pupils, making sure that actually happens. And I think, this will hopefully in some way enable that to be able to happen in the future. Yes, I would argue.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. The whole point about this is that it is to improve the situation of RE and to make it possible to inspect it and hold schools to account against what is known as a common set of standards and content that schools under the Offstead framework will be inspected against. And so it's very difficult. I mean, one of the feedback from Offstead in the deep dive was that it was very difficult to inspect RE because there's so many different syllabi and inspectors just couldn't cover the ground in terms of the knowledge they needed to know whether what they were looking at was really of high quality or not. So, there are some really important standout benefits of having a widely known set of expectations about the subject that then,
right.
Somerset and other brilliant examples can then build into really helpful, excellent, enriched RE programmes.
Thank you. So I'll go to Dr. Sarah Lane-Court, the chair of the RE Council. And as you say, you've been pressing for this and involved in the way that RE unfolds in the classroom as well. What do you say, do you think will be the impact of this review on the status of RE in the staff room in a school, will it give greater confidence to RE teachers that they can hold their own against any other humanities subject in the school curriculum?
Well, I really hope so. I think one of our key aims has been to secure the status of RE as a really key component of every child's education. And I think as the RE Council, we have 60 different member organisations which all come with different experience, different backgrounds. And I think one of the really positive things about the recommendations in the review that will ultimately end up helping those who are at the chalk face, as people like to say, is the fact that the responsibility has been handed to the sector. This isn't the Department for Education saying, this is the subject content, this is how you're going to do it. This is actually saying you need to work together as a sector. So put aside those differences, actually model what we ask children to do in the classroom, listen to each other, work together, and come up with something where there is a broad consensus that can take us forward. And I think that's really exciting. I know some of our members don't like the concept of a national curriculum. I think perhaps that's because we all have ideas of what that means. And this is a way of inventing something that's new and works for such a broad constituency that I think we have to seize this moment and see it as a real opportunity for everyone involved in the subject, focusing on children and young people because they're the ones that this is really about, but actually recognising that this will empower teachers, it will bring in faith and belief communities' voices, and other organisations that support the subject will be part of the conversation. And that is really historically significant. And, I'll say again, it's really exciting.
What will be the role of faith groups in this setting of the new curriculum? I believe you're connected with the Free Churches movement as well. Can religious leaders expect their voices to be heard? Do they need to do anything to make sure that they are listened to?
I think what we would like is to see people owning this and recognising professionals have real experience of constructing curricula. And actually those people who are religious leaders probably don't have that experience, but they do have the capacity to build constructive and positive relationships within communities. And I think that's where we go back to SACREs, that actually SACREs bring together people from a wide range of different religious and belief backgrounds who can support the subject when children are in schools, when they're visiting places of interest. So I think there is opportunity for all of those people to have some positive place in this new landscape.
Thank you. And just to say to everyone on the call, if you have a question for any of the speakers, do put it in the chat box. We're going to go to our last headline speaker now, Professor Susanna Cornwall from Exeter University. Thank you very much for joining us, Susanna. We said at the beginning that we have reported on data that shows the number of universities offering single honours theology or religious studies is declining to about 21, I think was the number that Theos found recently. And the number of students applying for places has fallen as well. What do you hope this review will do to change that? Do you have high expectations that if the subject is on the national curriculum, it will renew interest amongst young people to study the subject at university?
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. So, as you said, I'm based at the University of Exeter, where I'm subject lead for theology and religion. I'm also vice president of the Society for the Study of Theology, which is a member society of TRS UK, which is our national subject association for theology and religious studies at higher education level. So we've kind of been among these conversations and have sort of really supported the work of NATRE and others on the call for a long time. So I think, yes, we do see this as a real opportunity, because one of the things that we know is that when the numbers of pupils taking GCSE and A-level RE at school goes down, the numbers of students entering TRS degrees goes down too. Now, most universities don't require incoming TRS students to have done any RE at school before. In fact, that's not an expectation we have. But I think it's just the assumption that, well, you would have had to do that before in order to do it at university. We also know in the TRS community in higher education, we know how important RE teachers are, specialist RE teachers in particular are, as ambassadors for the subject more widely, and we know that a lot of the students who do come in to do TRS at university are the ones who've had really passionate, really engaged, really well-equipped RE teachers. So, our hope is that if actually this leads to more students having a better quality of RE experience at school, that that could have a positive difference. And I think this is really important at a time when we are seeing heightened social volatility in all sorts of ways, and high quality education in religion and belief is really, really important. We know what important vectors schools are for social cohesion. RE is a really, really critical part of that when we're thinking about how to cultivate, young people who are critical thinkers and committed to upholding culturally diverse societies. So subject specialist RE teachers are crucial here. So I think, yes, the development of national curriculum RE is going to offer a really exciting opportunity to develop a robust and diverse curriculum, which is really fit for purpose in the 21st century.
What kind of conversations will you be having with the groups putting together this national curriculum to make sure that there's a seamless progression from studying religion in school to studying religion or theology at university?
I think for us, what is really important are, some of the skills that we already see in school RE where it is done well. And what we would hope to see is that actually that becomes more widespread so that, all pupils have the chance to develop those. So the kind of things I'm talking about are skills in critical thinking, how to interrogate information critically to identify bias and prejudice within it, a respect for a diversity of beliefs, understanding that actually intelligent thinking, critical people can reach different conclusions in good faith. And it's possible, obviously, to develop those skills with relation to a wide range of religious traditions and belief systems. So if we look at the kinds of students who do come in to study TRS at university at the moment, they come from a wide range of backgrounds. They might be Christian or Muslim or from another faith background. They might be humanist or atheist or all kinds of things. And I think whatever their prior beliefs, their prior commitments or affiliations, we want all of them really to be able to critically and respectfully interrogate their beliefs and others' beliefs. So I think it's possible that one of the things that a national curriculum for RE might be able to do would be to give more of a shared baseline for students in some of those foundational skills as they enter TRS degrees, which would mean that we in the university sector could give more time to helping them develop, higher level skills and how to apply those in the world today.
Apparently, this new review is advocating that students should study artificial intelligence when they're quite young as well. So that may be a route into theology and religion at university. Who knows? Thank you very much for your comments there. We are getting some questions in the chat box. It would be very good to put these to the panelists. Here's one from Faye Lowe. It's the first one on my screen. What implications will this have for faith schools, which currently have their own RE curricula, diocesan syllabus, for example? What about inspections like SIAMs? Someone can perhaps interpret that for us. Ed, I think this one is in your domain. Would you like to take that question? The implications of this for faith schools.
Thank you, Ruth. I have just posted actually in the chat. As I say, I was at a syllabus launch today in Somerset, the syllabus, the church representatives were there from the diocese. Same syllabus is used. There would be some tweaking. There was a slightly alternative version that included understanding Christianity resources, which can be integrated into the syllabus. I'm not sure this has major implications for church schools. I think, my advice as a former church school diocesan advisor and current SACRE advisor is that good RE is good RE. There may need to be more denominational or Christian content in the church school syllabus, but that's not that difficult to bring in. I think the point is that we want high quality syllabuses. And I'm hoping that the national curriculum syllabus will be high quality. One of the fears is that will it be overly prescriptive? Will it limit innovation? Those are worries about a national curriculum. Who's going to write it? But I don't see that's a problem for that's not a problem in the current system.
So just Dr. Ogden, perhaps just for clarification, this the new curriculum, will it apply to faith schools, state schools, independent schools, all the academies? Will it apply across the board?
Well, the national curriculum applies to all schools in the state-maintained system, except for at the moment, as you know, there are academy freedoms, but the Children and Wellbeing Bill is seeking to change that and ensure that all state-funded schools follow the national curriculum. That said, there are important symbolic so there's a really important symbolism around the dual system and the importance of faith schools existing for parents to educate their children in a faith school setting, and particularly around RE as well. And so there's no desire to disrupt that. In fact, we would have to change the law if we were to do so, and that I think would be impossible to do. So even if one wanted to, which we don't, I think what we're aiming for is exactly what has been said, is a high quality religious education for children that builds really fantastic intellectual capabilities and social cohesion and a deep understanding of self in the global context in which we live, and that everybody will want to follow that curriculum, that it won't be something that schools of religious character feel they can't belong to and support. That's where we want to be.
Thank you. We turn to another question now from Justine Ball. Question for the panel. What would be the first thing you would get groups in RE to think about now while the advisory panel is being formed? Business as usual for everyone, focused on enhanced professional development, develop further RE contacts, or perhaps something else? Richard, would you like to take that one? What would be the first thing you would get groups in RE to think about now?
I'd certainly say get excited. I think this is a landmark moment, and so the opportunity to take RE forward is under Vanessa's work. It's a unique opportunity. I think the one thing that I would probably say is. And this is on the basis of the fact that I found during my time at Offstead and in returning to the sector as well, a remarkable degree of agreement about what constitutes great RE in the sector. There have been a number of reports that come out over the last few years, and they have all had a sort of a golden thread going through them. So I would really encourage teachers and leaders of RE to get reading, to get thinking about some of those common threads that really have united and brought the RE community together.
I just put in the chat, actually, almost exactly what Richard just said at the end there about finding the common ground. So really thinking about where the commonality is. I think really listening to one another, really intentionally. What are different people saying, thinking? But above all, absolutely agree with Richard. This, I think, is a time to celebrate and just welcome this. And also, I think, to really support Vanessa Ogden as well, who's named as the person that's going to be chairing this work going forward, and get behind her and what she plans to do to move things on, I think.
Thank you. Deborah, one question to you is a battle has been won today, RE on the national curriculum. What's the next thing that you want to win? I'm thinking perhaps bursaries might be your next target.
You took the words straight from my mouth, I think, Ruth. Certainly bursaries, because as the Secretary of State said today, we absolutely need specialist teachers in the classroom in front of children, and in primary schools. We need something really clearly done to make sure that primary teachers get the training they need. Because if you haven't got the teachers in front of your class, it doesn't matter what you give in terms of a curriculum. They've got to know how to teach it. And I don't just mean subject knowledge here. I mean subject pedagogy as well. You have to know how to teach it and be confident about that. The school, what was it called? The teaching of school leaders research that was published by the DFE. It's called The Working Life of Teachers and School Leaders. Showed that religious education was right up there in the subjects that primary teachers and even secondary teachers said that gave them the most anxiety and made them most nervous. So that training is absolutely key to the success of this project.
In the last remaining moments, I would like to invite the panel to answer some questions about the fact that in society today, non-religion is rising and religious affiliation is declining. We mentioned the curriculum being something around the spine of religion and worldviews. What would you say to people from a non-religious background who may not like this development very much and think that it would be a backward step? Would any of the panel like to respond to that?
I think it's a great question, Ruth, but I think it's probably worthwhile saying that we are, as educators, collectively trying to equip our pupils to engage in a world that's complex. It's a term I've used often is multi-religious and multi-secular, and some global estimates have over 80% of the world's population as identifying in some way as religious. So that's the world as pupils that the people are growing up in, and it's the global world that they are going to encounter, and they need the tools and the critical thinking and the ways of engaging and contributing to that society. They need to learn those, and what better place to learn that about the way that the world is in all its diverse beauty and complexity than in a subject like RE.
Do you agree with that, Dr. Ogden? If I could just ask you to come in at the end.
Yes, I have spent my whole life working towards a unified society where we have a belief in human mutuality and the importance of that as a very essence of humanity, and a way of living together reciprocally without hierarchical power relationships, which means that we can come together as human beings and collectively celebrate that humanness in all its wondrous variety.
Thank you. And thank you to all the members of the panel for your insights today. Thank you very much for joining, and everyone on the call.